Welcome back to another striking Decoded technique breakdown. Today we're going to be covering three questions. Why and how is Ilia Topuria able to win exchanges at such a high ratio? And another question we're going to look at is, can beginners even do this? The third question is, does Ilia have some kind of superhuman reaction speed? And the last question is it even possible for a beginner to do this? So what we need to look at in these exchanges is the base of each fighter, who's attacking, who's countering, what types of counters are being thrown, and why they're able to be thrown at such an effective rate. Let's look at a very basic one, and we'll discuss 4 different points here. One of them is the type of counter that's being thrown. The other is the reaction speed. Does Ilia have superhuman reaction speed? And we'll also look at the standing structure of Ilia as he throws his counters. So let's move through this in a more slower way. I'm going to drag this. Let's pay attention to the leg kick that gets thrown here by Charles. We can see that Charles has not swung his hand when he throws his kick. All he's done is taken one small step and slightly pivoted on his lead leg in order to bring his right leg into Ilia's quad. Okay, what I want you to see is how fast Ilia's reaction time was, given the fact that there was minimal indicators that a strike was about to be thrown. What we can tell here is that as Charles is moving towards Ilia, closing distance, you can see that he brings in his rear foot now to position himself quite balanced above his two legs. And then he subtly steps forwards again here and pivots right here. Boom. Okay, that's the only indicator so far. There's a slight shift of weight, and then in the second frame the knee starts to pivot in. Okay, so there's a weight shift onto a pivoted front leg, removing weight from the back leg, making it light enough to throw, and literally within 2 frames you can see Ilia begins to brace for his counter. So I've done the maths here. This video has been shot in 30 frames per second. This means that Ilia is moving. He's reacting to this subtle tell after 1/15th of a second. Now, if you do a quick Google search on this or on how fast that is compared to normal human beings, it works out to be roughly 4 times faster than the average human. And that's no surprise. Obviously, he's the best fighter in the world. This is all he does every single day. So this is giving him a massive advantage in these exchanges. The fact that he's able to react so fast. But that's not the only thing. Obviously, he has to be able to detect the tell. This is mastery at a phenomenal level. So again, Charles turns right here, shifts weight, bends the knee in, starts sending it. What Ilia does is he lifts the front leg. Okay, look at this. He lifts the front leg, and what that does is allows for his weight now to essentially fall onto the back leg as he then is able to extend and fall forwards. Okay, so what's happening here? He picks up the front leg. The weight then has to shift onto his back leg because that's the only thing touching the ground. And he essentially shifts forwards with a little push off his toes, okay, using the calf muscle, and he falls forwards. This counter now is thrown, and it impacts Charles at the same time as Charles hits him. And what I call that is an interrupt counter. Now, if Charles was going to throw more than one strike here, he's now off balance. He's taken a shot while he's got one foot in the air, and look here, he's falling backwards now. So that's the power of an interrupt counter. Okay? And throughout these clips, Ilia does this many times. Interrupt counters are his bread and butter. And then he steps in and the fight continues. Here's another example. This is the knockout. So let's play at full speed first. There. And let's notice Ilia's base standing position. as soon as he detects Charles closing the distance for his what appears to be a straight right, Ilia throws his back leg backwards, lifts his front leg off the ground. Okay, the back leg hits relatively straight, so it's at maximum weight bearing position. I'm assuming he's probably on his toes or with his foot pivoted facing directly towards us at the moment, so his heel is bearing all of the weight right before his calf muscle engages and allows him to explosively rotate right there. You can see his heel off the floor. So I'm not sure. I do see him with his back foot heel down relatively often, so I'm assuming that the heel was down, but he was able to, but he turned immediately to apply rotational force into his first counter. Bang. And then he ripped back into the knockout left hook. So that's an example of a normal counter. Now let's move over to here, next one. Here, Emmett steps in with a low kick there, and he takes the same left hand, which misses. Emmett does a great job of slipping his head out of the road as he throws the low kick. But because of where his weight is and the fact that he threw the kick with his hands up, okay, which is probably a good thing to do when you're fighting Ilia, but he wasn't able to use his hands, okay, to generate the balance that was required to keep him from falling back heavily onto his back leg after the point of impact, and then having to deal with Ilia pretty much head to head with him and throwing a full combination. Now let's move forwards to the shot. Emmett throws a distracting strike and dives for the legs. I don't want you to pay any attention to that other than the fact that Ilia is now running backwards. I don't know if how fast he can run backwards, but that looked pretty well top speed. Skipping, and now what you need to see is that as he's shifted back onto that back leg, he's in a position where his upper body is in front of his hips, his rear leg is again straight, and in this case here, it was on the heel first and then rotated onto the toes as he fires his immediate counter to the shot. Bang, right there. So what he's done is he's shuffled back and he's made Emmett pay for trying. Another perfect example of a counter. There it is again. Here Emmett throws the cross, a roll attempt, I suppose, and this is again the same shuffle back movement. Notice here that as he skips back, the foot in the direction that he's coming from, his left leg, touches down first, allowing him to detect his movement speed to inform his body at which angle the rear leg needs to be positioned in order to suddenly stop his movement in that direction, and in order to place him in a position to again counter. So the thing about this that we need to pay attention to is that if you put your feet, if you're moving backwards like this or forwards, if both feet hit the ground at the same time, you run the risk of your upper body getting kicked behind your hips. Okay, so I said a minute ago that this position right here and the position before, Ilia has his chest in front of his hips. This allows him to pivot on the axis and throw his rapid and powerful strikes. And it also allows him to be able to stop his momentum and fire immediately as he rotates his hip and comes up and engages the calf muscle and comes up on the of his foot rotating into the strike. And there's the rest of the combination. Let's continue. There it is again. So those of you that have been paying attention, what type of counter is this? It's a normal counter, okay? He takes the shot and then he gives it. An interrupt counter, classically, is a shot which impacts your opponent at the same time, interrupting their combination. A counter does the same thing, but there is a distinction in the timing. So Emmett stepped forwards with the low kick. Then he's taken the straight right. Emmett's fallen back. And here, Ilia continues with his combination. Let's have another look at interrupt counters. You can see here, boom, throws the low kick, takes the shot. Boom, again, interrupt counter, interrupt counter, normal counter. This is the strike here. He parries the incoming jab. He actually just gets tagged right there by a phenomenal jab. But the idea is that he was looking to parry the jab with his right hand and come over the top with the same hand in this case. Again, I want you to notice the position of his body. He has his chest in front of his hips, his knee is not in front of the toe line, and the rear leg is straight, rigid almost, probably at nearly full extension, as if he was doing a leg extension, engaging the quads, relatively full extension there. The calf muscle fully contracted, up on his toes, driving forwards with his counter strike. And here he is, skipping forwards, rear head, the leg behind him in the direction he's coming from, touches down first, and then the lead leg touches down afterwards. You always want to be spreading your base. You're not going to be skipping forwards and your feet touching the ground at the same time, or skipping back, or any direction. You're not going to be moving anywhere where both feet are hitting the ground at the same time. If you're skipping, you have to make sure that you're always opening up your feet as you go. So if you're skipping forwards, it's the rear leg, then the front leg. If you're skipping backwards, it's the front leg and then the rear leg, so that your base always opens. And this is a perfect example of it here. Throws the strike, rear leg, front leg. And so does Max. You see Max here as he moves back. It's the front leg, hits the ground, rear leg touches the ground. Obviously both of these guys are at the top of the game. Okay, let's discuss now if it's possible for a beginner to do this in their first or second or third lesson of sparring. A beginner, I'm assuming, okay, if you're going to a gym, that the first thing you'll learn is your stance, the 6 or 7 punches, whichever it is that whichever way you're being told them. If you're doing kickboxing and Muay Thai, I'm sure you'll learn the kicks as well, and maybe some knees and checks and whatever else. And then after some time, you'll go and you'll begin sparring. And at the beginning, you'll be on the receiving end of everything. You'll be tense and all of this. This is what will be going on. What I suggest you do is, as these engagements happen with you and your training partners, pay attention to who's countering, who's being first. At the beginning, you won't be able to detect anything. It'll be all chaos. But eventually, you'll start to be able to recognize this person has a good low kick, this person has a good combinations, good straight right, good jab, whatever. When you can begin to detect what's occurring in your rounds, you will begin to progress. Okay? It's critical that you're paying attention to what's happening in the exchange. I actually have a full lesson on this. Okay, it's called the rules of engagement. Today we've covered rule number 2, which is never miss an opportunity to counter. Okay, so I'll go into this. I'll spend a bit more time going into this in future. If you have any questions or feedback or thoughts about what we're discussing here as we go through this, drop a comment in the comment section. And my goal with the channel, as it's just started now, Striking Decoded, is to approach high-level technique and strategy and decode it so that beginners can have something to chew on. You need to understand that these people that are fighting at this level, they're still humans, just like all of us. If you can walk, you can generate balance with your body as you're moving. Okay, so once you get that down, then there's a glass ceiling that you'll break through immediately, and you'll be able to start progressing. So thank you very much for paying attention and watching these phenomenal fighters do what they do best with me tonight. And don't forget to like and subscribe and all that other good stuff. And see you on the next one.